Morning, James Edwards.
What's on you, man?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good Monday morning. This is the Seven Cities Forums of Hampton Roads. Every day we rise is a great day to be alive. Of course, you're listening to WGPL 1350 AM on your dial. And I'd like to first start out by thanking the Bishop Edward Johnson for giving us this little spot during his morning drive time. Thank you, Bishop.
Oh, no problem.
And good morning, by the way.
Good morning, man.
How was your weekend, by the way?
Oh, man, my weekend was good, Doc. I had some good time with some family and friends, and got to spend a little time with my grandkids.
Yeah, did you tear up that organ this Sunday?
Man, I tore it up, and I guess my grandkids tore my pockets up, too. They wanted McDonald's. After church, right after church.
So you have to tear the organ up some more next Sunday to make up those dollars.
Oh, Jesus. I need a fourth job.
How about that? We all do. Just to keep a head above water. But anyway, we're waiting on the former mayor of Portsmouth, Kenny Wright, to come in, and we're going to be talking during this last week of Black History Month. We're going to be talking about the black fraternities and sororities, the history of them, and they have a great storied history. So we're gonna. He's running a little late, so when he comes in, we're gonna get right to it and start talking about them. And I want you to remember that this is also National Heart Awareness Month. And last week we had Miss Audrey Cook on, who is the vice president of the Centura Heart Hotel. I hope you got it. I still call it the hotel, the hospital, and I hope you got a chance to listen. It's still running on my page, so if you didn't hear her last week, check it out. It's some pretty good information talking about what the Heart Hospital does and a little bit about her being the vice president over there at the Heart Hospital. And as we sort of wind down for the Black History Month, we want to also be aware that we should be remembering our black history and passing it down to our youth all year round. A lot of things, my saying is, you can't know where you're going unless you know your history. You have to know your past in order to really to know your future. And it's so important, just like Africans did a long time ago, the African villages, they always pass their history down by word of mouth. So we have a lot of different ways we can do that now by word of mouth, which is the best way, through the internet, through Facebook, through just talking on the telephone, and making sure we pass down the history, the African American history, to our youth so they can be aware and be extra proud of who they are, and knowing that we contributed greatly to the formation of this great country we live in. And like I said, it's already great. We don't have to work towards it being great. It's already great. It's just some things, it's just like anything else. We all are human, and there will be flaws and hurdles we have to jump through. But it's always good just to make sure we pass down that history. And a rich history it is. And make sure in the individual cities that your youth know their local history and the contributions that many people made locally. There were a lot of national things going on with Martin Luther King and Thurgood Marshall and all those people we hear about all the time, but it also had to have that combination of what was going on locally, because the laws also had to be passed locally, to coincide with whatever was going on nationally, because we had resistance locally. So we had to have those freedom fighters right in our own cities. So make sure we recognize those people, in all our Hampton Roads cities, Portsmouth, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Hampton, Suffolk, all those Hampton Roads cities. Make sure we pass down that local history of those pioneers or those heroes and sheroes that made a difference in our lives. So, well, Kenny Wright just walked in, so we're glad to see him. And
good morning, brother.
Good morning. Thanks for coming in, man.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
All right.
One of the things I always wanted to do, and I wanted to get it in before the Black History Month ended is some information about black fraternities and sororities.
Absolutely.
Now, it's special to me. I'm not a member of either one of the groups.
But your father.
My father was. So, you know, that means I have a lot of respect. He was a Kappa man.
That's right.
But beyond him being one and having respect for that, I always had respect for the sororities and fraternities because of what they do in the community and their rich history. So I want to ask Ken to come so he could talk a little bit about the formation of it, why they were formed, and go back and give us a little history about the Divine Nine. It's I guess sort of a nickname that when I was reading it said it hadn't been officially adopted by
the Pan-Atlantic Council.
The Pan-Atlantic Council, but it's something that everybody uses to describe the totality of the organization and the groups that are involved.
That's right. Now, if you remember, that's how we met.
Yeah.
It's
and I was going to bring that up.
19 years ago, I was in charge of the 40th anniversary of the Portsmouth Pan-Atlantic Council, which was formed in 1960. The first president of the Portsmouth Pan-Atlantic Council was Miss Vera Wilson.
Okay.
If you remember Paul Wilson, who was a kid. His wife, Vera, his first wife, Vera, she was an AKA.
Right.
And she was the first president of the PAN, and I was chartered by Pan-Atlantic Council to dig up the history and try to find some of the founders at that time, and I was going through each fraternity and sorority looking for key players, and your father name popped up under the Kappas, and I was trying to get some history on him, and I think I met you one night around 8 o'clock at night. I came to your house and you gave me a picture of your father and a book. And him.
It was quite funny because you called and asked for direction, and I gave you the wrong direction, and you rode around in Truxton for about a half an hour looking for the house. But you finally found the house, and it was a meeting. We've been friends ever since. But that's how
been 19 years.
19 years ago. Doesn't seem like it's been that long.
I was actually the president of the Portsmouth Pan-Atlantic Council 2000, 2002 time frame, and thoroughly enjoyed it, and really enjoyed the Greek life. And roughly we've got about, throughout the world, just under 1.5 million card-carrying Greek members now active and involved in their communities. I would say probably half, or a little less than half. But the graduate chapters throughout this country are clearly the backbone of our fraternities and sororities, because they're ones that are more business oriented, more focused in the community, and involved with adopting schools, adopting highways, doing all different types of things to help mentor young people. And when you start talking about history, there's always a debate on who was first, what was first, and everybody is the first of something.
Right.
And the actually first fraternity was in 1904, which is the Boule.
Oh, okay.
Sigma Pi Phi.
I saw the Boule come up.
But they were not a college fraternity.
Right.
This was a fraternity of professional men, comprised mainly of doctors and lawyers.
And that group is still together today.
Is still
and
together
it's
today.
nationwide.
It's international. I'm a member. It's less than, right at 5,000 members. It's a very exclusive group. And again, around the turn of the century is when a lot of these fraternities and organizations in the African American community started formulating. Remember, that's just 50 plus years outside of the Emancipation Proclamation, where a lot of professionals and college-oriented African Americans didn't have things like their Caucasian counterparts. And so this was on the rise, and the Boule, if you can imagine being a successful black man back in the 1900s and not having somewhere that you could go and create a friendship and just drop your guard, and not always just on a professional.
Have a good time.
Have a good time. And one of the things with the Boule is we leave all our titles at the door. Whether you're a college president, whether you're a judge or a business owner, it's Kenny Wright, it's James Overton, and we get to know the best of each other and our families, and we work to utilize our influence to better our communities. And just to give you, before we get off the Boule, which was the first one, The Boule donated $1 million to the African American Museum in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And again, it's
So
a
that was
small,
significant in helping.
absolutely small group of prominent men that make a difference in the community
Giving
through
back.
giving back, public policy, things of that nature. You won't see the Boule doing the same things that you'll see the AKAs and the Kappas and the Qs doing in the schools and all that. Even
more
though,
in the background.
right, more in the background.
And a lot of those
Katrina-
guys in the Boule are members of the fraternities.
That's exactly right. But
Fraternity.
another good example, Katrina.
Mhm.
During that time down in New Orleans, I think we gave all of the schools down there, the African American schools that were hit hard with that storm, about $100,000 or $200,000. And so, you know, we've got resources from a financial standpoint that we try to make a difference outside of creating policy within our communities.
Let me say this before you get into the history.
Sure.
One of the things that impressed me greatly about the fraternities and sororities, a lot of them, a lot of the members pledged, grad, and a lot of them pledged post grad, in the alumni chapter.
Undergrad and then grad.
Excuse me, undergrad and then grad. So what impressed me is the dedication after that. You know, a lot of people that don't know, they think, okay, well, especially in college, it's just a fun time for the different groups, but you all take that well beyond your college education and whatever the mission is of each one of the groups or the mottos. You all take that and take it well beyond into the communities, giving back.
And I think one of the reasons for that is, again, back during the times around the turn of the century, there weren't a lot of organizations and clubs and outlets for college level African Americans that were engaged to be a part of. And so they
Greek
took
fraternity's been around for years,
That's
but
right.
the white Greek
That's
fraternities,
right. No, that's exactly
you weren't
right.
allowed to be a part of. So.
And so we took that to what's called the graduate chapter after college, and that's where it got cemented into the communities with helping and doing the best we can to promote mentorship, scholarship, and things of that nature. So all of them have what they call mandated programs that in order to be an operating organization in good standing, there are certain things you must do. And so you'll see all the time, some of the huge ones in Portsmouth, the AKAs and the Deltas. The Deltas just had their Valentine's Day dance last Saturday, I believe.
Scholarship.
Yeah, I was in New York. Well, yeah, those ladies raised somewhere in the neighborhood of about $10,000 to give to kids. Same thing with the AKAs and their JanuFest that just kicked off. They had a successful one this year as well. We do the same thing, Omega Psi Phi. The Alpha is one of the ones that I'm most proud of. They started probably around about 10 years ago, a MLK dinner, and trying to fit in MLK. That whole weekend and week is busy, and they picked the date, I think, just before the Saturday before, I believe, and it became a big hit. And I was one of their first sponsors. Now I'm a Q, but also a businessman. I was one of their first sponsors when they started, and I think they raised enough to give right at about $1,000 in scholarship. And last year, which has been almost 10 years at this event now, they gave away $10,000 in scholarship.
And that's a good point too, because they recognize other fraternities, but they also recognize people that are not in fraternities for their work in the community. And I have to thank the Deltas for honoring me at one of their annual fundraisers as a community person.
Right.
And all the fraternities and sororities do that. They go out there and they make sure they recognize the work that's being done by
exactly right. And we try
people
to partner.
that are non-Greek or whatever. It's all about, promoting people out there doing good things.
Right. I know last year before the election, we partnered with the NAACP and went door to door trying to register people to vote. We don't get into endorsing and things of that nature, but we do try to promote voter registration and going door to door to make sure we got good, clean list of people that actually live at places, or if they don't live there, we'll give the information back to the NAACP where they correct their records for the next time around. And that's normally done under what's called the Panhellenic Council. You know, these organizations started, like I said, the Boule in 1904, then the Alphas 1906, AKAs. Now, Alphas were formed 1906 at Cornell University. The AKAs 1908 at Howard University. Then the Kappas in 1911, and they were at Indiana University. The Omegas, Omega Psi Phi 1911 November at Howard University. So we like to say we're the first. Yeah, well, most of them all came from Howard, yes, except those first two. Right. And then the last one down the list is the newest chapter, formed in 1963, Iota Phi Theta, and they were organized in 1963 at Morgan State University. But again, these groups come together to do things collectively, and in 1930 they created the Pan-Atlantic Council, the National Pan-Atlantic Council, to kind of do umbrella type projects where we all come together as Greeks, like I just mentioned, doing the voter registration and things of that nature, because there are a lot of things we do that overlap, and it doesn't make sense if you can imagine a city like Portsmouth that we all are doing some of the very same similar things. Why not have a bigger footprint and do it under the auspices of the Pan-Atlantic Council, where we all come together instead of just the Omegas and the Alphas and the AKAs and Zetas and all of them doing it separately. And so, you know, and because again,
and you still have that kind of fun competition between each other.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of fun to watch. And let me say this too: the influence that you all have goes back to high school. I can go back to my high school days when we had little Greek clubs. You know, I was a part of Imperial Psi Epsilon, not knowing what Psi Epsilon meant. But one of the smartest guys in our group told us that's Greek, and you know, but it was like the executives, the diplomats, and this was at Norcom, and that went over to Wilson where you went. I think they had
that's right,
Greek. Yeah. So we were influenced by you all. And I think a lot of those guys went over to join college to a fraternity.
Well, most of the fraternities and sororities have things in the community. They call them smokers, cookouts, where you invite people just to get to know the organization, and that's how you get your name out within the community, so people know that there is a chapter here. We do exist, and through that, and through young people giving out scholarships and doing things in the community, cleanup day, things of that nature.
And people that might have misconceptions about, who you are, who you really are. You know, they might think, well, these not guys that sit on high horses. These guys that remember where they came from, just a part of a group, and they dedicated themselves and pledged a group that practiced their values. Right. I saw a guy on TV, on Facebook the other night. He was a stereotype. He was talking about stereotypes, and he was naming each group. And I said, man, when I was in college, they were some of the things people were saying. Like the Qs were the dogs.
That's right.
The more party group.
Party animals. That's right.
The Kappas were a certain way. Were the dressers.
That's right.
The Alphas were the studious. And they had all these stereotypes, but it's just like I just said. It was a matter of which group, because some people you might have visited a few of them before you decided, okay, Q is the way I want to go.
Well, one of the big things that drives that, I think, and what drove it for me, is the people that you know that are in it.
Right.
And I'm 27 years in, spring of '92, and back in '92 when I finished at Old Dominion University, some of the people that I considered in my regard high esteem, Horace Savage, Mayor James Holly, my dentist and dear friend Roosevelt Green, all these guys were Qs. Even though my idol was Hugo Owens, and Dr. Owens was an Alpha, but his nephew and I were dear friends. He was an Omega. And so naturally that was a little competition we had with Dr. Owens, that he'd always shake his head whenever we started talking Omega stuff. And but yeah, it's primarily with people that you know and people that you admire that are involved. And you're like, if this person, if I meet you and I like you, and come to find out you in different organizations, if you want to be like that person and you want to do those things in the community, then you want to join organizations, because that person that you hold in such high esteem normally is a guiding or an example for you. And so that's why we try to, especially at the graduate level, put forth that effort and letting young people see the professional side of what we do. And you're right, there is a party side, you know, primarily in the college life, and a lot of the things you hear, a lot of the negativities with things going on with illegal things with people like initiations and all of that. A lot of those things that people do that are not mandated by the organizations.
Yeah,
and
something
most
that started a long
organizations
time ago that was
long
accepted at
time
one
ago.
time, and now
Right.
as time went on and things
right.
came
hazing and things of that nature,
It's
which
more
has
about
been
dealing with the
that's
mind.
right. We have disbanded and pushed away from that over 30, 40 years,
Mhm.
and a lot of it still happens because, again, if you don't police things down to its infinite level, you can't stop every single person from telling someone that if you want to be a part of this group, you've got to do the following things. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of young people now that really want to be so bad they're a part of things, they'll do almost anything.
Anything.
And that's one of the things that we step in the graduate chapter and let them know, hey, listen, if anybody ever comes up to you and say, you need to do this, this, and this to be that, you walk away. You call me. You know, we'll put that to bed right away, because we're looking for great individuals. We're looking for good citizens. We're looking to show people how to be a part of the greater good of the communities. And those type of things do not enforce those things, and that stigma that we're trying to put out. And so, and unfortunately, bad news, like everything else, politics, it travels a lot faster than any good news. You know, you've got to go on page 7 to see us out in the community, or us partnering with different churches and organizations and helping the homeless and doing the things that we do. But on page 1, you can always see where something negative is going on, and that's just society. And so we try to educate folks, because again, that's political. If you just listen to the media and things like that, you will get a very confused view of what's going on within these organizations. I think Malcolm X said that once. If you listen to everything the media says, they'll have you fighting the people that are out helping you instead of the people that are oppressing you. Because, again, it is about education.
We have the lawsuits, and most of the time, if you talk about the big scope of things, and you mentioned how many millions of people are members, you know, it's a small,
Just imagine
they're
that, right?
isolated incidents,
Right,
but
right.
they blow them up to look like.
And
Let me go back to the history right quick, as far as the sororities and fraternities being involved during the civil rights movements. I remember my father always told me, as being a Catholic, especially during those times when he would travel throughout the country, and you couldn't stay anywhere.
That's right.
He said, if he knew wherever he goes to Chicago, if it was
That's
a
right.
brother there,
That's
he had
exactly
somewhere
right.
to stay.
He had somewhere to stay.
So,
That's right.
and I always, and I'm equating that to the civil rights movement,
Right.
when the Freedom Riders was going. It was a lot of people, and I'm sure,
Well, that was one of the
fraternities and
beauties of
sororities
it.
was involved. In,
For things to be a catalyst like the civil rights movement. It was already a network in place where when you went from town to town and places speaking, like your father, I was doing some history, and I think I called you and asked, was your father in the Navy?
Yeah.
Because I was reading somewhere before he was in the Navy, he was speaking at some group out in Isle of Wight, and they called him by his military title,
Chief.
Overton, Chief. And I was like, Chief Overton. And he was speaking to, I think, some teachers.
Yeah.
And it made some teachers that were upset with the pay, not having equal pay or things like that. And so, when you start doing that research and looking at how do you get your message across, and how do you get it, especially the tough road was doing the southern states, you know, so you had 11 to 15 states that you really had to rely on fraternities and sororities and organizations. I think you had the Green Book. As a matter of fact, that was is that the movie that just won the Oscar last night with
Surprised to hear about
when you're traveling, when stars travel, they couldn't stay in certain hotels and restaurants.
I
And
mean, that movie, his
stuff.
driver could stay,
Right,
and he couldn't
That's
stay,
right.
and he was the star.
That's
you know.
right. I was talking with Mae Breckenridge Haywood probably about a year or so ago, because I had a picture of Marian Anderson when she came to Portsmouth and sung in the 40s, and she was at someone's house on Effingham Street. And I could not understand, you know, why did she stay there and all. And then once you start putting all that together, they had the Green Book, and there were certain places, there were certain names of
They
people
knew.
that when you go into certain towns, you could contact those folks. You could get a place to stay, the whole 9 yards.
And you heard the story about Holly is telling about Martin Luther King staying at his house.
And yeah, I know, right?
But it probably was a connection with the fraternities too. But
Sure.
that was his wife was married to YT.
I can't remember.
Well, anyway, it was a family connection
That
there.
connection
But I
was
think
there.
it was also a fraternity because he
That's
was Martin Luther King was an alpha and
Right. Well, and Dr.
Dr.
Hall
Howard
is a Freedom Riders coming through town and coming through Portsmouth and Norfolk and all, and they all use those Greek connections to help be able to promote other things within the community. And so it was real prevalent during the Civil Rights Movement, and that's why it's still prevalent today, because you have annual conventions and things like that to stay together and make sure that you're talking from a national level what you're doing in all of the local chapters. They just don't have local chapters in different cities doing their own thing. It still falls under the national umbrella of the organization, which then falls under the national organization of the Penn Atlantic Council. And so, yeah, it is an excellent networking opportunity, and it has been very positive. It's, W.D. Du Bois talked about the talented 10th. And those people that you expect a lot. I'm very hard on my fraternity and sorority brothers and sisters because I live by that credo that to much whom is given, much is required. And I think there are a lot of things that we can be doing. And so I'm always constantly pushing for us to do more, because you can see in these days and times we're losing ground in a lot of areas, and our leaders need to step up. And our leaders in our communities, all our fraternities and sororities and different folk. You know, I laugh a lot when I go to speak at schools like Norcom and all. I got to remember which hat I'm wearing, whether it's the Omega hat, the Eureka hat, the Boule hat, because all of them are doing a lot of things when it comes to helping kids and being able to talk and have a presence and all. And so, and I enjoy it a lot. I really do, and it makes a huge difference in people that really get in there and hit the road day in and day out, helping. When people see you 4 or 5 years later and say you spoke somewhere and made a difference in my life, and I became an engineer because of you, or I got into politics because of you, and so
I became an engineer and a Q because of you.
And that's why it's so important that we get out and get to know the best of each other, but make sure we're doing our jobs in the community. And so our fraternities and sororities have done an excellent job with that throughout our history.
And I was talking to someone some time back about the pride that the sororities and fraternities exhibit, openly. It's kind of different from the white fraternities. After you don't hear a lot about them, but you certainly hear about, if they're news reporter, they're going to mention that they're a member of AKA, they're a member of Deltas, or.
Right.
And you remember when one of the ladies in the city of Portsmouth, somebody at a public meeting said, "Why do you keep hiring fraternity people? You're talking about our city manager." And my thing for that, I said, well, most African Americans, about 80% of them that go to college are going to be a member of something.
That's
so
exactly right.
That's just the way it falls.
Well, it was like an understanding
and their
on
thing
her
is
part.
excellence.
Right.
It's a part of what they
That's exactly right.
try to relate to people.
Right. And when you're looking
themselves.
for good people, you're looking for people that are members of those organizations that have done things in the community. If you're looking for somebody to do community-based type things, you're looking for somebody that has that background. Have you gone into communities and done those types of things? And so that's another one of the reasons why you look for those things. And so, yeah, they were misunderstood. Frequently, there's a lot of them that are misunderstood. They don't understand the Black Greek fraternity and sororities because of the mission they have and what they do after college and in the community. And so when they mean ill will, they bring up anything just to throw it up against the wall. And so I think that lady, and she was a Caucasian lady. Was,
and of course the profession comes first.
Right. Absolutely.
And just you're part of that fraternity or sorority.
I can tell you, I fired a couple of Qs in my business, right? So,
but look, it's never enough time. We'll have to have you back to talk more about the fraternities. I think it's important for people to know, white and black, especially in our own community, to know how important it is to have these sororities and fraternities involved in our communities. And we're going to have to talk more.
I actually brought you a history here. I got a book, Howard University Yearbook,
Oh, okay.
1916. This is 103 years old.
Yeah.
This book here
A little
from
bit
Howard
before my
University.
birth.
Look.
But
And
yeah.
you know I'm a history buff, and I
Yeah.
love these things and going through them. And it's amazing the information that's in here. You know, Howard is the mothership for most of us, and so it's interesting reading those and looking at the names of people there, and those names transcend all communities and all greatness that's happened within our organizations, whether it's Supreme Court justices all the way down to just teachers working in the community, all on a common goal of doing the great things for our society.
Well, Kenny, we really appreciate you coming in and sharing some information about the great sororities and fraternities and the Divine Nine and how they work together. We really appreciate that. We have to do this again because there's a lot more history to know about that. And we hope that you enjoyed the program today on WGPL 1350. And we'd like to say be aware, be informed, and most of all, be involved. God bless you, and see you next week.
Good job.
Tune in from 6 to 10.
You know, I was in Charlottesville last night. My daughter, Georgia Tech, was playing UVA, and we got on the road. And I got in late last night. Oh, we're still up live. But
thank you, Mayor Wright.
that's right.
Still calling Mayor Wright. Take care. Thank you.
All right.
Cliff Hayes. Thank you, Jeff.
Cliff, yeah, there's another Omega man. That's right.